Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to part 3 of the IDHC Gestational Diabetes Prevention and Awareness Training. Some of you will have joined us in September for our Introduction to Gestational Diabetes Awareness with Crystal Bomberry, and in October for our clinical piece about gestational diabetes management with Georgia Baum. And we're here now for our third session, which will be about cultural teachings around pregnancy and birth with Renee, grandmother Renee Thomas-Hill today. And now I am pleased to introduce the wonderful grandmother Renee Thomas-Hill, who is going to share some teachings with us this afternoon. Renee is of the Cayuga Nation, Bear Clan from the Six Nations of the Grand River Territory. As a Haudenosaunee woman, she is charged to pass on the teachings of her way of life and the message of peace, power, and righteousness, sacredness. She shares as an Indigenous woman, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, educator, historian, artisan, and has many other roles, including the holder of names, storyteller, traditional Golden Age smoke dancer, traditional counselor and healer, and a holder of traditional knowledge of plants, foods, and medicines. Renee will be joining us today to talk about cultural teachings around pregnancy and birth. And with that, Renee, I will pass things over to you.
Yeah, miigwech, sego, sewakwego, Kanate'hson youngets. I'm speaking to you in Ganigihagi, the Mohawk language, because originally, because of residential schools, you may have noticed that I have previously been introduced as a Mohawk, but because my grandmother went to residential school, and she was raised by other people. So now I was given by her a request to find out her family. And because of that, I found her lineage, which I share to you, and it's Cayuga Bear. And for the longest time, you know, when I would be speaking to different people, they would say, "You're not a Mohawk." And I go, "Yes, I am." And they said, "No, you're not." And they said, "You're not a turtle. Maybe now you are, but now you're not a turtle." And lo and behold, I found out who I was. That is the greatest thing, that as picking up our roles. And I'm going to speak to the two worlds. I use this wampum belt, the two-row wampum, because it's our way of understanding life. It not only meant for the treaties, but it was also to talk about relationships. Treaties are relationships. And so we have to be mindful of our relationships. So right now, I am living in two worlds. And I had to learn how to, just like you, to learn that other world of technology. So I send blessings onto all the computers before we got started. So we'll be okay. So I'm here to share the knowledge that came from the spirit world to bring that message to us. So I use that top line as our ancestors, or I could use it as a creator. The creator had given us our instructions. You see, 1, 2, 3. He'd given us our instructions on how to be. And this is so powerful. This makes me cry because there's so many things you can use this for. You can use this as for a parent talking to their child, or my age, a grandma talking to her grandchildren. Or it could be a husband and a wife. It could be many things. A community member to the parents. So our relationship is very important. And that's what we need to learn about relationships. And so the first relationship we have is with the one above us. That's so important. How many of you start your day off with that relationship with your higher power? How many of you have said thank you? That is the most important way to start your day. When you start your day in that way, your journey will run smooth. Being grateful is that understanding, and that's why we call the Thanksgiving address. That's a part of being grateful. When you say the Thanksgiving address, you see, that's that relationship with Creator. Today they call it spirituality. To us, we had known it as our relationship with our higher power. How many of you have a relationship? And I know many of you are renewing your relationship. And that is nice to hear. Because for the longest time, we put aside that because we were taught that our way was evil, that our way was pagan. But today I speak to you as a pagan, and that is of nature. I am of nature. Everything that is about me is of nature. And that is the way it is with everybody. No matter what color they are, no matter what nation they are of the land. And today we hear that. Land acknowledgement. Oh, we've been doing that for a long time. We talk about our relationship, where we come from, and that is our mother, the earth. And this is the land that we are. Even Kanate'hson, that means that talks about the people that live where the mountain is. And our nations were named after the land. And so this is where, when you heard that, you knew where they came from. So it was a sense of belonging, relationship, belonging. And so knowing those words and knowing the Kyoga nation, they were of where the muck land, or where there was swampy land. But you know, having that in my history is telling me my roles and responsibility. And this is why symbols is the first language. And that's why I use symbols. We have to bring back those symbols so that we can remember. You all have it. You all have it in you, and it's called blood memory. All these symbols were to remind us on how to fulfill our responsibilities while we're here. That's an English word, responsibilities. To me, it's your relationship with creation. Are you respecting it? And so, isn't that different from your responsibilities? It's your relationship, how you love it. Because your relationship shows you, do you have respect for it, or don't you have respect for it? And so we have to take in that consideration, my relationship. And so when I speak of me, I am of the land. Everything that I have inside my body comes from the land. This is what our children need to know. This is what we need to tell everybody. I am of the land. And you know what? We have the most beautiful words when we return back to the earth. And in our language, it is so beautiful, because when we have a loved one that has journeyed on, no matter what age, as a parent, these are the things you are to know, traditional. You are to know these things, that when they make this journey, they're going back home, because that is from a very special place. All of us, how many of you tell your children they came from a very special place? How many of you tell yourself, I come from a very special place? And so we are reminded that in a lot of our belts, I could bring out all our belts and show you that relationship from the sky world. Even our symbols of the natural world, how we came, and it's in our creation story that we came from the sky world. So that's important. That's very important, because they call it spirituality, but I call it our creation story. where do you come from? And that's where children will want to ask that question, where do you come from? And if you don't have that understanding that you came from a very special place, you're going to be filled with a lot of sadness. But the Creator left so many symbols all around us to remind us. And so I like to acknowledge all creation. And so at this time, I will acknowledge creation. I will do it in the English language so that many of you will understand. But I will try to do a short version because you see, to do the long version would take up this whole session of 2 hours. And so I will, because there's many families out there that are looking after us. And so you need to acknowledge that relationship. And so, first of all, I like to acknowledge each and every one of you. I want to thank you. And I want to thank your communities. I want to thank each and every one of you for the work that you're doing, for the life that you have, and the life that you are supporting. And so I give thanks to all the people of the world, for all those that are troubled, for all those that have found peace. And that's a duality of life. Because in us is that twin, and so there is a twin in creation. It is to remind us. And so I give thanks, even for those experiences that caused us pain. And so pain is the greatest teacher. And so I like to acknowledge that. Because pain makes us humble. Pain reminds us that we come from a very special place and that we need to take care of ourselves. Isn't that there's so much talk today about self-care? Well, you see, the Creator already had that in mind. And so we create these words for gratitude. We give Deitina Walada, we give greetings and gratitude to all. And so we always start with the people, because that's where we are here on earth, and we look around and we see all these people. Some are troubled, some are on different levels of understanding life. So we have to think of everyone and not set aside our prayers just for specific. The prayers are meant for everyone, no matter where they come from, where they are in their lives. Those that are troubled, those that are in crime, those that are in leadership, we need to pray for them because they've lost their spirit. And so we give thanks to the next one we call Itnistaha Yon Honzadi, our Mother the Earth. This is a mother that has loved us unconditionally. She never got a chance to fulfill her duty because she left early in childbirth. And many of us, we need to understand that, because there are times in our history that our mothers have left. And that is how it was with my daughter left, leaving a little one behind. And there are ceremonies that we must do. And so because she had left at an early time, she was able to continue that love, that unconditional love, because she never got a chance to hold him. She never got a chance to do the things that we do that are alive. And so she gave them a gift to help. What they call them today is tools. And one of the things she gave us was that good mind, because she was pure. And every one of us comes from that place of being pure. And so we are reminded of that, of having a good mind. We have that ability every day to have a good mind. We have that ability to let go of anger, because that good mind is connected to the heart. And so we give thanks. And because of our mother, from her breast comes the sustenance, the corn. And so it plays a very important role in our life. It also helps those that have lost their mothers at a very young age. That very nipple at the top of a corn is a sacred corn. And that corn was to help those ones that have lost their mothers. And so you see, Creator has taken in a lot of consideration for our wellness and our well-being. And so that corn, it is like we are being nurtured by our mother, no matter how old we are, because we all sing the same song. Oh, remember when you're eating a cob of corn, what do you say? It's It's just like you being nurtured. And so that is a sound that we need to hear. And then from her fingers, this is what I always look at. How we use our hands to make us well. We use every time when we have a pain. And so from her fingers we came beans. And so beans was absolutely the perfect gift for us to maintain health and wellness and well-being. So how many of you love beans? Did you know there's so many varieties? And it was to help us when there would be lean times, because mother always wanted you to be fed. How many of your children eat beans? You know, that was our survival food a long time ago. How many of you were raised on beans and beans and beans and beans? I was. And I miss that food. So sometimes when I get so hungry for it, I'll cook a big pot, but I have to learn to cut down, only use a small portion, because that bean soup is ceremonial food. And this is why we use it in our longhouse, because it was to give us, to build up our immune system. Because that first mother, she didn't want our children to be sick. But look at us today. We're not giving our children beans. We're not feeding them. Came from. And they, you know what? They tell us corn's not good for us. Corn, because they forgot the understanding, that relationship, how it came to us. The corn that you said is harmful to us is the man-made corn. The man-made corn. There's so much chemicals in our foods. And so we have to learn how to get back, because our creation story, our opening address, it talks about all these things on how to restore our wellness and our well-being. And so this is why every parent, every mother, every son, daughter should hear this story every day, to give thanks. To give thanks, because that is what build up our immune system. And speaking from your heart, some people just read it on and it doesn't have that relationship. But when you say that opening address, it talks about your creation story. It talks about so many things. So the physical part, the mental part, the emotional part, and the spiritual part. How many talk to your food, knowing that your food has this is its role, its relationship to you. And so we give thanks, because from her we get these gifts. That's unconditional love. So when we taste those foods that come straight from the garden, we don't need any salt and pepper or mayonnaise or whatever's out there today. It is filled with so much love that, how many of you got to experience it this year? I did. I was tasting food again that I missed all winter and all spring. Oh, when I ate the tomatoes, they taste like the tomatoes when my grandma grew. I taste the squash. I taste all these things that my grandma had grown. It was delicious. And you know what? Those plants knew how much I love hot food, because from 2 little plants, about 3 or 4 feet high, they give me 100 peppers. Can you imagine that? So they want to keep me warm. So you see, all those foods, they come from a very special place. And this is why we need to hear the stories. We need to hear the stories, and we hear that every time we say the Thanksgiving address. So this is why it takes almost 2 hours about our gifts, what was given to us to restore us for wellness and well-being. This is what every parent is to learn. This is where all the chiefs and all those in leadership, this is what their mother was to teach them. How many of you are teaching your children these? It's very important, because you know what? It will help them later on in life, because they will look around when they feel that they've been abandoned, or when they feel they're not loved, when they feel that they're in need of something. All I have to do is look around and see that she's still providing. That's why we rise up to protect her now, because many people are renewing that relationship with her. And so we give thanks. And from her stomach created the pumpkins and the squash. I remember making pumpkin seeds to eat later on. Those were our snacks. They weren't chips. They weren't all these what you call junk food today. And they weren't salty like they are today. And so all these foods, each like those sunflower seeds, or pumpkin seeds, they were medicine, and they still are. So you see, there's love again. There's love. And we forget, because every time when we don't want to cook anymore, we'll rather use the microwave. It's like you see, the Thanksgiving address also talks about parenting, our relationship with others, and especially our children. And the old people will talk about that people will forget how to cook. People will put aside that very essence of cooking. Because how many of you remember your grandma cooking? Didn't she always sing? She was happy to be in the kitchen. And she just knew that her children were going to be smiling. Her children were going to be saying, oh, that's the best food ever, Grandma. So that's why. Because there comes that mother in our roles, that nurturing. And so these pumpkins are very important to us. But a lot of families today don't eat vegetables because their parents don't eat vegetables. They lost that understanding, and they abuse their food. You know, it makes me very sad. How many of your children said, yuck? Isn't that abuse? That's like speaking to someone and telling them in their face, yuck, I don't like you. You see, our grandparents knew you don't say things like that. You don't disrespect that little seed that came a long, long ways to help you, because that seed knew how important your life was. And so you look to that food that was placed before you. You look at this hero that came to your life to build up your resistance so that you wouldn't get sick. And so this is why we sang seed songs to those little seeds. In May, we would sing our songs, because once we take that, it's just like we give it back to our mother. We touch those seeds and let those seeds know they are to be a part of us. Isn't that a relationship? It's like, this is my part. And when I hold those seeds, I'm putting a lot of love in them because I care. And then you warm up the earth. This is how the men used to do that a long time ago. The men would get the ground ready. You see, there's that role of parenting. Everything that we are how to conduct ourselves is in a Thanksgiving address. Now they would say in Kyoga. And so these things are our vision to see what is coming next. And so when we sang to that little seed and we took it, and the men had prepared it, again, men and women were preparing for the future of our coming faces. We're creating a safe environment for all children. Isn't that so? Isn't that what you want to do with your children? It takes teamwork to grow a seed. And so it teaches us all about being parenting. Parenting. The men have to clear away the brushes. And that, again, shows how the men, their duty has never been taken away. They are to make sure that environment is safe for their child. Look what is happening. They're allowing these things to come into their communities. This is how we had those big gardens, and they would clear the land. They would make sure that every child was taken care of. And so that seed represents that little child. And so you want that little child to grow strong. So what you do is you sing that song. And you don't just go out there and leave it there. You go and check on it. See, that's that relationship. This is why you have weeds. They're the little helpers. They grow and keep them company till you come out there and talk to them, and you have to clear away again. We always have to, or they work in, remember I said duality? What you had considered weeds was they were the plant's companion till we came and supported them by taking them out, and so that they can be strong and get all the nutrients. Yes, the weeds will come back again. That's how it is in life. Weeds are going to come around your children. Those are the influence, negative influence. So everything about gardening, about that earth, talks about parenting. So you go out to the garden and I always take my shoes off because I want to feel the earth. And when and you know what? There's that duality of the two row wampum. That's me and Mother Earth. She's sending me energy to help me because you know what? Every mother needs help. Parenting is it's a handful. This is a handful. This is a child. They need their parents, mother and father. They need their grandparents on both sides. They need their aunties and uncles on both sides. They need their cousins on both sides. And they need their community to make them. And so what you have is a seed. The seed to nurture you. Seed to be taking care of you. And so that seed, when it's put in the ground, it knows that others will come and attend to it while you are. Because it says it takes a whole community to raise a child. So what do you think is happening in the garden? All those little bugs and critters, they're coming around. They're noticing a little seed coming. And they probably talk to it. And that's just like the animals do with our children. How many you allow pets? You see, those were the first companions of a little one. My grandma talked about the time when I had a little dog. Well, I mean, shouldn't say a little dog. I was a little one, and the dog was a big one because it was a German Shepherd. And he knew his responsibility because my grandma said my mom would put me out on the lawn and she'd go in and she told him to watch over me. And he would sit right at the end of my blanket, and every time I crawled off, he pulled me back onto there. And he let me fuss with him. And so he was a real good babysitter. And so you see, all those seeds, they need that companionship, that relationship. And that's what every child needs. And that's what every mother needs. And that's what every father needs. So you see how gardening was so important. And so that little seed starts to grow, shoots out of the ground, peeking around, looking around, knows that, oh, where are they? And then when you come and visit them and you hear the laughter, you know that seed gets strong. How important his role is for them, his relationship to them. I'm going to make them tall and strong. I'm going to make them healthy. Isn't that so nice to hear? That's how my grandma would explain. And she said, you know, that little seed, he has to take everything. A good example, look at that storm the other day. Look at how the wind blew and the rain came down and poured and there was hail. That little seed cannot get up like us, and remove ourselves. That little seed has to just kind of be flexible. That means humble. How many of you teaching your children to be humble? How many of you as parents are teaching yourselves to be humble? You know, you're not supposed to give your child everything. That's the greatest sin the people are doing today, is giving their children everything. That's what the old people talk about. How are they going to appreciate things? Look at our landfills. We have become a waste population often don't care. We've lost that understanding. And so we have to be reminded of the Thanksgiving address. This is why every child should know. Because everything that comes, that toy, that object comes from her. But it wasn't meant to be disregarded. We were to teach our children how to fix things. How to, I like that Toy Story, you know, where the too many children have all the, I mean, they have so many toys in the box and they only play with few and they always want more. Well, that's how we teach our children to be a want society. And what it's going to do is going to cause you a lot of chaos. And so it goes back to the Thanksgiving address. It reminds us that everything that we have, we must take care of it. And so that little seed will overtake all those challenges. Isn't that what we want our children to do? We want our children to be strong in any storm. We want our children to overcome those challenges and not break and fall. And so these foods was given to us to have this resilience. And this is why that little seed continued to grow and grow and grow and grow. And then when you came out to the garden, you would always talk to it. And it would seem to grow another inch every time you had visited. And so it finally came to being, you even sing to it. And that's what we did. My great-grandchildren, I was so blessed. When we got the land ready, we put in, you know, we recycled. You know those tea bags? Every tea I had, I saved those bags, I opened it, and I put it in a jar so that my mother, I'm giving back what she gave me. I'm giving back the nutrients that she gave me. This can help her. Oh, those eggs, I don't throw them in the garbage. What do? I save them and I crush them up and I give her back the nutrients. Isn't that sharing? Isn't that a relationship? And so there's so many things that we can do to build up our mother's blood. She's getting drained because everybody wants. New furniture, new cars, new things every time. What is it doing? It's making her weak. It's just like taking advantage of your mother, taking everything away from her and not giving her anything in return. And so it goes back to creation story and it goes back to Thanksgiving address. So you see, it is so powerful. And so we come to that place. We have abused our food. Look what they do to the pumpkins. They only grow them so they can put them up for Halloween, draw faces on them. Is that respect for your food? Because a lot of them just throw it away after it's. Nobody saves those seeds when you're carving out. And most of that's what they talk about. Be careful not to teach your children to abuse the gift that's going to make them well. So you see, we have a society because of the food has no spirit. Because what is mostly people, humans, they're burnt out, they're stressed out, so therefore they don't care. And the work that comes through, there's also the handling of the food and there's no care. So when the people eat the food, you are what you eat. And that is, I don't care. You hear people saying those words, I don't care. How many of you hear the words, I'm bored? That is telling your body is telling you a powerful statement. You are eating the wrong kinds of foods. And our people knew that. This is why we give thanks to all those foods, to all the animals. It was very important for us to have wild meat every year because those animals had the survival instinct. Today, our children don't have that. And this is why we have a lot of mental issues. because they've lost that spirit of that food. It goes back to that food, where it came from. You have the duality of life. You have food that is made from man. You have food that is made from Creator. So which food are you giving your children? Is it the one of I don't care, stressed out? Or is it the food that has been done with Creator's love and Mother's love, our earth? And so you see, there is that duality in life. So now we come to that seed. And what is the first thing you do? Grandma says, you know, everybody used to sit out there and watch the food as it grew. Young men would always be watching, because you see, we also had to share our food. So our men would also have their duties is to look after that food. How many of our men are looking after the food? We have to be mindful of that to make sure that that child's going to be tall and strong. How many of the men contribute to the land, looking after the land? I came from like many of you, my grandparents and my parents, they had that relationship with the land. We had gardens. We had, even when we were growing up, I remember that at a very young age, we always had wild meat. And then I remember the first time eating a store-bought meat. It was different. And I asked my dad why a long time ago, because I was one of those kids that was always asking why, how come. And so they had to, I wouldn't let up. They had to give me a good answer, then I would be okay. And so that's another thing that parenting, you are to learn the truth. As a parent, you have to do research. Why? Those are the first teachers. Who, what, when, where, and why. Because who's going to come and teach you? Who's going to come and remind you? Is those little children. How many of you have been asked, how come? Who? What? Why? So you see, those are the first teachers of life, because your child is coming back. Your child will ask those questions so that you will come back to that truth. And you always say, if I don't know it, I'll go and find out for us. You don't make up a lie, because they know. And they'll question again and again till you share the truth. So that's what's in that seed. The seed of hope. So now we come to another part, is our feet. Remember how your parents would say, oh, you need to wash your ears or you're going to grow potatoes, or you got to clean your feet, or you're going to grow potatoes between, because it reminded us to take care of ourselves. And so the toes now was, we have, it's called like the sunflower, part of the sunflower family, and it's artichokes. That's the English name for it is. But we had called it wild potatoes. This was very, very important for our people. In my research, I had found, because I love history, I was one of those kids that, why, how come? I want to find out the truth. And so I wanted to know more about us. And I came across this article, and I'm trying to think where I found it. But it says that when the visitors came, they had come across a group of people, and what they saw their diet, and they would say, oh, they must belong to the potato clan. Because we like potatoes. And that's a typical indigenous meal, is potatoes for us as Haudenosaunee. We love potatoes. And so but that wild plant is for us, is to help us with those sickness that would come. And one of them is diabetes. Did you know that? It is to help us because we will forget how to eat. And yes, they say the potatoes are not good for us. It's because what do we do to it? We put lots of butter on it, we put milk in it, and we put other things in it, salt, to make it so tasty. How many remember eating a raw potato? We need to, that's the first thing the children will teach you when they're babies or little toddlers. What do they like best? They like something to chew on. And so it reminds us, this is what, again, talks about our whole facial. Our whole facial features have changed because we're eating soft food. We're eating soft food. This is why our people had high cheekbones, was because we ate raw food. So I want to keep my cheekbones, I want to get them up. So I love raw potatoes. In fact, I just had one. I get a craving for them about this time of year, and every so often I'll get that craving. I gotta have a raw potato because that's a traditional diet. Because all you would do is brush it off. You don't need any salt and pepper, and you ate that raw potato because it had all the nutrients. It had all the nutrients in it. And so I'm so grateful that when I was growing up, I had a relationship with all those foods, rutabagas, things that people that they look at and they don't want to eat it because they don't know what it is. But all of them, turnips. How many remember smelling turnips at this time of year? These are the foods to prepare us for the winter. These are the foods that did not need refrigeration, and this is why we talk about that. And so now we continue and we think about all those plants, those little shrubs, those little trees, how they are here to protect those little ones. Every one of us needs shelter. Then we go into the strawberries. The strawberry is a powerful medicine for all the people. It is the medicine that is to use when you need healing, when you need to refrain from eating or fasting. And so we'll have to learn how to go without. Isn't that how our food teaches us? They only grow a certain time of year. And so this is what we need to get back to, is being reminded how to eat accordingly to the seasons. We had a duty of preserving them, of drying them. And so, but the Creator always had food for us, But we need a supermarket, and we always get upset because we see the prices of food. But there is still those foods out there that our ancestors lived on, and that helped them to sustain them so that why we are here today. They had famines, they had hard times, but directly what you would call weeds.
Okay. Oh, there you're back. You froze for a second there.
Oh, the teas come from those plants, from those little bushes. The leaves, the bark, the roots, they are what we are to have. Today, we abuse it. That medicine that was given to us, what do we put in it? Milk, sugar. We had honey, and you would use some honey. But a lot of our taste buds, you see, our tongue today has an overcoat. This is why people are now brushing their tongue, because their tongue has gotten an overcoat. And this is why, because you put all these things on top of your food, we no longer eat the food in its natural state. This is what is happening to and this is all about parenting. How would you use that? All right, you have a child. You don't need to put in all those things, as they say, from outside sources to make your child be strong. It comes from being natural, all their gifts. And so your child, you feed your child with good words. You don't put on them all these things. You put good words in them. That's called nurturing. And that's what the garden teaches us, a relationship, nurturing. Your child, you know, our people a long time ago, we wore buckskin. We didn't have those fancy robes and big hats and all those things. And that's what the visitor says. Ha, look at them. They're walking around like they're kings and queens, when all they got is just cloth on deer's animal. You see, we didn't need to.
We've frozen again.
Plants.
Oh, there.
Well, I live out in the country, so it's going to stop and go.
I try and fill the time for you while it's frozen, but then you're catching up with me as soon as I, unmute. So I'll let you keep going there.
Well, forgive me. I'm just hoping that we don't freeze so much. I need your help. Put your energy up to the internet and ask that the message, what we are to share today, will come through, because there's energy flowing from your fingers, and that is energy. And so we ask at this time that the words that are shared today can be heard, and that they will bring understanding and peace and clarity. So if I freeze, automatically go like that, please. I need your help. It's my relationship. So getting back to the medicines, the strawberries. Now we have the four-legged ones, the two-legged ones, the wing ones, the fin ones. They were part of creation. When that first woman needed support, they came to give her a place to live, and they took care of her. They give of themselves so that she could provide for her coming child. So she made a commitment at that time not to overkill, but to honor and respect each life that was taken. And I often go back to that when I tell the children, be careful if you, I tell my great-grandchildren, my grandchildren, I said, if you step on that bug, you got to eat him. That's how sacred life was. We didn't go around abusing animals because of that commitment of that first relationship, how they came to support us so that we can survive. Aren't they doing it to this day? They are. You know, sometimes a bird may fly in front of you when you're driving, or a dog may come across your path and you hit him. You see, they gave their life so you don't destroy yours. They're giving you warnings. A dog will howl and tell you there is grief coming. And that is why I cannot understand why people are angry at God or Creator. When something happens to their family, they blame God. When in reality, it's us, because we're not listening. Creator loves us so much. And there goes back to parenting. Who taught us parenting? It was the natural world. Look at how the animals, when they're babies, they don't know their enemies. They play with one another. And you see some animals that have been like the deer and the dog. They'll have that relationship because each of us, from that creation story, reminds us of our relationship to help one another. You know, they're the first ones that taught us how to adopt. We use this word, stepchild. Oh, my mother didn't like that word, stepchild. These children come to us so that we can be a mother, so that we can be a father, so that we can fulfill our roles. It's not removed from us. They come into our lives so that we fulfill our role as human beings, being a parent, giving that love and support. And so you see, this is why there's that little division when you say step. So it means away from. We need to break that and say they are our family. That's how my mom would always say, they are our family. Because we were raised that way. My mom, she was given a brother, even though she had a brother. Because one of my grandfather's friend had a son, and his mother had given him up, and he went to look for him, and he found him in an orphanage, a boys' home, and my grandpa to watch him, and so my grandpa did. But after a while, my grandpa and grandma, he became a part of our family. I never ever said you were my step uncle. I always said, hello, uncle. And that's how I was taught. Hello, auntie. Because in our family, we have our family, because the animals are our first teachers of parenting. That's what people have forgotten. The animals have taught us how to be good parents. You see, the wolf, too, goes back, the four-legged one. He goes out hunting, and he knows he has to provide. So he goes out. But he'll come back, and he knows his partner, his mate, she needs to be relief. And so he lets her, and he stays with the children while she goes out. So it's teamwork. That's what parenting is all about, is teamwork. Everybody wants a good woman, or everybody wants a good man. Well, my grandma always said, you got to be that good person to have that good man or that good woman. Because it falls on just one. This was removed from us a long time ago. We forgot how nature looks after. They do it as a team. You look at the forest, the trees, how they look after other little trees. You look at the animals, how they look after those little ones. They all contribute. So nature has taught us the important role of parenting. So now we come to that place where the animals, they teach us how to release. And that is one of the most important things. How many of you heard a dog cry? He tells us there's going to be sadness in our home. So he cries ahead of us, and he lets us know. A bird, how many of a bird hits a window? It is to tell us, to forewarn us that we must make things right in our family relationships. This is why we have so much grief. Because it teaches us, don't take everyone for granted. Isn't this what this pandemic has taught us? Don't take relationships for granted. It always has to be nurtured. The animals have shown us how to release in a good way. So this is why we acknowledge the animals in that opening address, because there's so much teachings from the animals. When the animals are sad, do they stay in that place of sadness? You know, a good example is a dog. A dog looks at man and loves him unconditionally, even if he has harmed him. The trees look at us as we're their children. There is to be 13 trees around us. 13 trees for us. Why? They're supporting our life. They're taking away all the grief and giving us the goodness. So nurturing is the very important role of parenting. So the trees, the plants, the sustenance, the medicines, they're nurturing us on how to share that gift of nurturing. That's what it is to be a parent. Sometimes you're going to have to be on call 24/7. Do the trees complain because they have to be always there? No. The plants teach us. My grandma would say, you watch the plants along the river. All those long grasses. And it teaches us, you know, sometimes being stubborn causes chaos. And so when the long grass along the river, when they know there's a big storm coming, they learn how to be flexible. If they were rigid, they would snap and they would break. So we have to be very flexible in parenting. We have to be flexible. We have to be flexible with each other, man and woman, parent and child. We have to learn to respect. So what do they call them? The 7 grandfathers, the 7 thickness of our skin. This is what they have taught us: sharing, humble, respect, honor. All those plants, all the creation has taught us how to be a good human being, how to nurture ourselves and others. That's the first thing of being a parent, And so we come to that place. Now we look at the water. We look at the water. How many of you have teachings about this water? This was your first home, because this is what protected you. And so in our way, water is our blood. Water is everything that we need to be nurtured. Yet we disrespect it. We are polluting it. Now I'm going to go back to landfills. Because of so much tossaways, they cannot break down. Water tries to break those chemicals down, those iron, everything that man makes, plastic, styrofoam, all those things. When you get things, water tries to break it down so that it will be taking care of you. Sometimes that water takes on the sickness of all that poison. How many are flushing down the drain chemicals? How about hair dye? When people want to do their hair, when you put down dyes, you flush in the, your prescriptions. When you flush down a lot of things. Water is the gift of life, and this is what we need to remind our children. This is all about parenting. This is our mother, another mother of us. This is what the first mother give her children, is that tear to cry. She put that in us to help us. And so we were to teach our children, whenever we drink water, we are to say kind words to it. This is why we had ceremonies. What makes our medicine, what makes our food, what makes anything is this, is water. People don't like drinking water. Yeah, I know why. It's because people have taken out the spirit of water. They call it purification. There's so much chemicals. So we need to nurture. Again, it goes back to being a parent. Everything that becomes my life, I have to nurture it. I have to have a relationship with it. And so parenting is nurturing. So I give thanks to this water. Whenever I'm using it, whenever I'm making medicine, I'll ask them at water, I said, may I have your support in creating this gift to help my child be well? Or when I make a soup, my meal, I ask water, permission. Isn't that respect? Is that honoring? How many of you do that when you're cooking? Washing your clothes, taking a shower, washing or feeding your garden. Everything goes back to that relationship with water, how you treat that water. Because you see, when you swear, your water becomes rough. This is why people have ulcers in their stomach. We are having to add things in the water. Sugar, all these different things. So when I think of water, I think of my life, because that's a good example of the continuation of life. This could also explain death. You see the cycle of water. Did it not come from sky world and it come down to earth, goes and feeds and nurtures Mother Earth, and then goes back up to sky world again. And then it comes again. So there teaches us about life. And every child should know these teachings, because death is not as fearful. And that's one of the first things my grandma taught us, is that life is like water. Life is water. Yes. Life is water. What's the last thing that goes from us? Our lungs fill up. So this is why we acknowledge water in the Thanksgiving. Next, it's like we are standing here and we're seeing all these helpers that have come to bring us to a good place in our bodies, our hearts, our minds, and our spirit. So now we come to that place where we look and we see the winds. Now the wind comes. It's to teach us to be like a parent. This is the best medicine of being a parent. We do that to ourselves. I mean, you have a headache. What's the first thing you do? You go like this. Oh, you had a rough day. You go, oh, you just brush yourself off. And that's what the wind teaches us about nurturing. Fine words, you know, like you like the soft wind. And yet we have to have the harsh wind like we had the other day. It's like, no more. That's what she means. That grandmother, Mother Earth, she's saying, going like this, no more. And so she's teaching us, this is why we have the winds from the 4 directions. This is all about parenting. Learn about those winds, because that helps us to nurture everyone that comes into our lives. The wind, sometimes it's cold. And when that wind is cold, our signal to get ready. There's work for us to do on parenting. Wrapping. Now, we used to have shawls. And these was the first important thing about parenting. Wrapping, making sure. We always, when that wind comes, it tells us to wrap ourselves. And so when that wind comes, my grandma would always say, you always make sure your soft spot, that place where heat comes from, you want to keep that heat in. So this is why we wore this. We want to keep our shoulders warm. So this is why we use the shawl. The women would go this way. The men had it over their shoulders. The wind was the greatest teacher of being a parent. We have to take and bundle. What are we doing to prepare? What is in your bundle? What is in your bundle? Do you have everything in your bundle? Do you have the medicines? Do you have the food? Because the wind tells of change. Are you ready for change? We have to be ready for change. And so this is what we would give when a person got married. But it starts at a very young age, because the wind taught us to be prepared. The wind had taught us there's going to be great change. Are you ready? So the wind taught us, when we heard the leaves talking to us, that the food is ready. The wind taught us when rain was coming, because the leaves would turn. So we must teach our children, again, about the changing of the weathers, the 4 winds. Now we have the coldness. Are you building up your body for coldness? This is what the pandemic is all about, because you see, We have lived a life of not doing. When the weather teaches us, we are to be out there in all the changing of the weather. This is why we are to have our children and ourselves out there to build up our immune system. Hot water tanks were just invented within 100 years. Prior to that, we all took, we warmed up water. When a child was born, we would take them and we would introduce them to their birth, the water. So you can imagine what time of year, what kind of water would it be? And so when you were taking that, you were dipped into that water. Isn't that what they use, baptizing? But we used it to help them to know their relationship. That water plays an important role. And so when that water was cold, it was building up your immune system. We are grooming our bodies for sickness. We're taking too many hot showers. The idea is, I have to laugh about this because it's so true. When you come from a large family, it is the little ones that get the warm water first. And you want everyone else gets to use that water, then finally, because that's how precious water was. And then when you're the oldest, by then it's cold. So you learn how to take cold showers, cold bath. My grandma said, the best makeup you can ever have is cold water, like this. Every time you wash your face is to use cold water first, because it perks up your skin. Isn't that amazing? Cold water. Cold water was also to help urges. When your mind was in a place it shouldn't be, cold waters will smarten you up so quick and make you change. Cold waters was a way we disciplined our children. Every child and every human being needs to learn to have discipline. And that's what nature is teaching us. So everything about nature is teaching us. And I only got to the waters. There are still many more of the Thanksgiving address that I could share. But I'm going to continue just a little bit more. Now we have, after we have the waters, we're now in the sky world. Now we see the sun, our eldest brother. And a brother is always to be that helper with raising the children, and he becomes that uncle. An uncle will always have to step in so that the mother doesn't raise that child. And an uncle is more of a discipliner than a good friend, because he will tell you. And then we have our grandmother. You know why the Creator created this? Why we say all our relation? So that we're never abandoned. And that's what he tells the children. You'll never be abandoned. You'll always have love. The humans may forget, but I will never have you go through that. You will have all those that you will need to flourish. And so the grandmother will watch over you at night. She knows your birthday. She knows all about you. She knows your struggles and your trials. This is why she's there to help you. There's more to that. But she says she watches over you with so much love that she leaves her teardrops, because that's that tear of love. You'll always see it on the grass in the early morning. That is the medicine for the men. to feel the grandmother's love is to bathe in it. Because men also need that nurturing when they become fathers. Because they've been taught to be strong. But every man needs that nurturing. This is why sometimes today's society, men are more draining than women. Because they pull, and this is sometimes what gets us in wrong relationships. Because they may treat you in a way that they're always taking. So that moon and that sun is that relationship, again, between man and woman. They are to support one another, not to be controlling over the other. They are to support one another. So the nighttime comes, and that is a gift from grandmother. You've been working too hard. So I want to, and that's what we are to do to our children. We are to have, on how we used to do it a long time ago, we didn't have clocks or watches when we went out and played. When the sun set on the trees, you're to be home. So again, protection, discipline, everything that we need as parents and as a child. So you had to look, oh, I gotta go home. And so you knew. So disciplining was given to us in a good way by all nature, so that we could grow to be healthy. This is why the nighttime came. We are all to get ready. We're not to be eating after 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, we are supposed to be getting ready for bed. We are to be, so my grandma and my mom said, because you're a mother, you'll need time for yourself. So the best thing is 7 o'clock, you start getting your children ready. Let them play in water. Again, the water takes off all that grieving that you have, the sadness and sorrows and frustration you've had. And then now you take away anything that's heaviness and grieving, and you got to fill that pot up with goodness. So this is a time for storytelling. Because all the plants and all the trees, there's so many stories out there of how to be a good human being. And so when the child is filled with goodness, their cup is full, then that's when sleep will come so easy. And so this is why the darkness was to teach us. Sometimes people have nightmares, but that is a teacher too. It is to teach us to stop running away from our roles and responsibilities. So there again is parenting. So there's much, much more. I haven't even got to the other ones in our lives that have been a very, very important role. And so you see, parenting has been given to us by the natural world. And I didn't even use my other props.
We'll have to have you back, Grandmother Renee, because we are just about out of time now, and I do want to allow people a chance to ask some questions. So Nyawe, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm reflecting on a lot of what you've said, and it's been interesting as you've been speaking. The sky in front of me through my window has been changing. From dark sky, a little bit of flurries, and now the sun is out, which seems a timely way to end after being with you in this good way this afternoon. I would like to invite anyone who does have a question to type it in the chat box or type it in the Q&A box. Any reflections on anything you've learned today, any questions for Grandmother Renee, please do type your questions. I'm watching the box here. You have people thinking today, everyone's quiet.
Yes. I was always told when there is no question, then I have filled your cup that is overflowing.